professionalism, and I think it's a good idea. I think it's the right thing to do. We might have started 25 years ago. We might have started 15 years ago. We've got to start sometime. So this is a talk about a proposal. And the proposal is that we establish a professional body that represents the testing community. And I'm just going to walk through some ideas, some things I've actually done, and I've got some plans and the beginnings of a project, you might say. But it's a proposal. It's not a real thing yet, but I think it's potentially viable. But there's a lot of water that needs to go under the bridge to make progress with this. So I'm just trying to launch an idea, get feedback, and then maybe see where a group of us, a large group maybe, could make progress with it, and to take advantage of something that I think, take advantage of an opportunity that I think is before us. Okay, so as an overview, if you like, this is kind of the mission, if you like, that I kind of set myself, or I'm setting to us as a community. Testing is important. It seems to me it's getting increasingly important. I know a lot of people want to automate testing, and they are automating testing, but the number of testers isn't shrinking so much. Even with automation, you need skills to create good tests. Okay, so testing is not going to go away. Okay. The second point is the market for testing is increasing, but also the technologies that we're using are evolving so quickly, and we're kind of our theory that follows the new technologies like machine learning and AI and continuous delivery. Testers are always kind of left behind, and it's people like me and the so-called experts in the community will come up with suggestions of how testing will be adapted to suit agile, continuous delivery, mobile, whatever is the next thing that comes around the corner. But it's always based on some fundamentals that never change, and those fundamentals, I think, could be the basis of our body of knowledge, for example. So the third point is, I want to suggest this, that our goal is to bridge the gap between practitioners and vendors and try and, if you like, catch up technically so that when the next big thing arrives, whatever that big thing is, we're ready for it, okay, as a community, as an industry. In order to do that, we need a representative body, a not-for-profit body, which I'm code-naming Test Engineering Institute, that promotes professional development. That is, it helps all of us to improve. It also provides a professional registration service. That is, it allows us, through a process of peer review and evidence, to demonstrate our skills and our experience and our capabilities so that we can be granted a professional qualification. And I'll talk about how that would work and how it does work in other industries. And if you like, what I want to suggest is that I think there's an opportunity to follow the pathway that civil engineers, mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, electronic engineers, and a whole raft of other engineering disciplines, they've trodden a well-worn path, and I see no reason why we shouldn't follow the same path if we want to be engineers. It doesn't necessarily mean we have to adopt the high integrity academic level of approaches that currently are manifested in what you call the software engineering part of our industry. Anyway, let's move on. So I think I've done a kind of a business case, and I'm going to share with you a few ideas from that business case. And the first one is like the market gap. I think existing certification has value, but it doesn't provide a professional registration service. When you are quote certified, all it says is you've passed primarily a multiple choice exam to say you've learned some aspects of a syllabus through a course. Customers. I think practitioners need a professional institution that supports a personally defined career path. That is, SFIA, the skills framework for the information age, is a great idea, but it's career paths by sheep dip. It's kind of everybody gets the same pathway, everybody gets the same training, everybody gets the same career path. And I don't think that's how the world works. And it doesn't work that way in the other engineering disciplines. I recall very well looking at my own career when I was an engineer for a couple of years. And I said, well, okay, over the next 7 years, I need to do this, 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 and this. And it was a personal journey, not one that you could open a book and say, right, that's my pathway. It's got to be personal, I think. Otherwise, it's not meaningful. Financials, again, I have no evidence or data, and it may be interesting if Isabel could come up with some data on this, of course. Professionally registered engineers enjoy improved career prospects and 18% above average salary. Now, if that's not an incentive for doing this, I don't know what is, okay? With costs, the cost to us now is because we have no representative body and there's no one we can go to say, please, 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 can you help me to demonstrate to my employer and prospective employers my value to the testing, the business community? We've got no one to do that. And certification as it currently stands does not do that for us because it's kind of, there's been a kind of a certification inflation. Everybody's got them, or everybody who thinks they have any value at all has them, but half of our industry think they're a waste of time or a bit of a scam. And that's just not going to work for us as an industry. We can't go on like that. Usability. Professional registration does not need to be an expensive thing to do. I've looked at the costs in the other engineering disciplines and it varies quite a lot, but it's not outrageous. It's very reasonable for what it is. There's an administrative fee and a little bit beyond that, but it's not a huge expense. The problem we have is we have no body that has a set of registered engineers who can review the evidence provided by applicants, proposers, to say, this person is qualified to be a engineering technician, an incorporated engineer, or a chartered engineer. So that's where we're at. Now, the code name I'm using and the name I'm proposing is the Test Engineering Institute. However, I want to talk about how the Engineering Council, which is a UK organisation, however, it has international kind of tentacles, if you like, and that the model that's used in the UK, I'm sure, could be adapted in other countries if it was required for there to be an American Test Engineering Institute or an Indian Test Engineer or an Australian or whatever. It's the model that's more relevant than the actual bodies in themselves. I'm sure a similar scheme like this can be run in many, many countries because there's a kind of an agreement in Europe called FEANI, which is the portability of engineering qualifications across Europe. I'm not entirely sure of the Brexit connotations, but whatever. There's also an agreement with many countries overseas. The Americans, I think we have an agreement where our qualifications are portable to America and vice versa. They are valued in the partnering countries. I think it's the Dublin Protocol or something. It sounds quite sophisticated, but anyway. But there are international agreements about these things. Okay, so these are like passports that have value across national boundaries and continental boundaries as well. So the Engineering Council is a body that oversees all the significant engineering institutions in the UK. And I'm just going to read out a little bit of this. I don't want to dwell on it. You can read it for yourself. Maybe we'll look at the video later. But the Engineering Council sets and maintains internationally recognized standards of professional competence and commitment. It defines what a professional engineer should be capable of. Okay, let's say that. It's called UK Spec. Okay, and I'll talk about that shortly. In the UK, there are 229,000 engineers and technicians who've been assessed and have been granted a professional title. There are 3 professional titles I want to talk about. There's a 4th one, but I don't think it's relevant, even though it looks relevant, it's not. Engineering technician, which is, let's say, you could say that would be a tester, a professional tester. Incorporated incorporated engineer might be a test lead, let's say, and a chartered engineer might map to a test manager or a senior program test manager, that kind of thing. I'm not saying those are the layers. A good tester should, with good experience, be able to become a chartered engineer, I'm sure. It just takes a little bit of experience and time. Now, in the UK, again, these are the institutions licensed by the Engineering Council. So, for example, the Institution of Civil Engineers has been around since 1820 something. I mean, it's nearly 200 years old now. It had its own scheme, certainly in my day when I was a civil engineer briefly, but now it aligns with the Engineering Council. It certifies engineers according to the rules of the Engineering Council. It is adapted slightly, I'm sure, to account for the fact that civil engineers are not the same as physicists or water and environmental managers, you know, or the energy engineers. Institute of Mechanical Engineers, again, it's been around for 200 years maybe. The Institute of Structural Engineers, which is different from civil, but not so far distant. And the BCS, the British Computer Society, the Chartered Institute for IT, is part of this scheme. And then the Institution of Engineering and Technology is where the electrical and electronics engineers fit, but also it's kind of evolved to become a more general technology kind of a school, if you like. So it also accredits software engineers as well as electrical and electronic engineers, a bit like the IEEE in the US, I guess. So, okay, so all these other engineering institutes exist and operate with the same kind of umbrella. Now, the pathway that's described is kind of fairly simple to look at. That you may have some educational qualifications that are helpful in your journey to registration, but principally you would be assessed as an individual, okay? Your experience is different from everyone else on the planet, and that's what you would submit as part of your proposal to be accredited. There's a review against the criteria in UK Spec, which I'll show you shortly. But there's also, if you're going for the second and third level, incorporated engineer, chartered engineer, you'll be interviewed by registered engineers, peers, okay? The third level is there would be a body within the institution, the certifying institution, the professional institution. There would be a board which reviews all candidates and will say yes or no based on the recommendations from the professional review interview. That's kind of roughly how it works. There's more detail. There would be procedures to follow and review processes and appeals and 100 other, bureaucratic but important issues to cover as well. Now, UK Spec is this. It's the UK standard for professional engineering competence and commitment. Okay, the latest version published August 2020. I can't remember how many pages this has got, but it's something like 50 or 60 pages. It covers the 3 levels. It has a glossary of terms, okay, which is helpful. And I want to walk through very quickly the criteria for an engineering technician. And my guess is professional testers, most people would want the engineering technician accreditation and probably stop there. Maybe they're never going to be a test lead or a test manager or a program test manager. But those levels would be, if you like, slightly more rigorous or somewhat more rigorous and demanding. But essentially, the requirement is this: engineering technicians shall demonstrate engineering knowledge and understanding to apply technical and practical skills, the basic technical skills you need to be a tester. The second, evidence of their contribution to a bigger project. Okay, now the wording here is so vague, it's not really very helpful, but I guess we'd have to sort of refine that to look at software projects in the round. The next 2 talk about being a supervisor or a manager, or have technical responsibility for a team maybe. Interpersonal skills, communication skills, of course. The ability to operate in accordance with safe systems of work, so which is a lot of software guys don't work in dangerous environments, but some work on systems for sure that are high criticality. Then there's a commitment to professional engineering values. The commitment to develop your skills over time, the continuous professional development idea, and also there's a code of practice and a code of ethics that, again, we might be able to use a generic version. It might be we have to refine it to include some aspects for testers specifically. Now, those are the kind of the 6 areas, and they're covered in this table with 5 skills. And this is the highest level on the left, knowledge and understanding. And you've seen the highlighted text, top left, engineering technicians should use engineering knowledge, understanding, blah, blah, blah. And then the rest of that row of the table is giving you a bit more detail and how you demonstrate that capability. Now, again, it's a little bit vague, and it leaves it to the discretion of the licensed institution to provide that detail for themselves, okay? And my guess is that's kind of how it would go. In that each of these areas for testers, there might be some specifics that you would want to include in the testing community that aren't relevant to civil engineers, mechanical engineers, and so on. But I should say this, knowledge and understanding is definitely a technical area. Design, development, solving engineering problems, certainly beyond what the certification schemes give you at the moment. We need to have a much better handle on design and problem solving within the testing kind of regime. And that's B. But C is more generic about responsibility management leadership. It's fairly generic. So we can leave that as it is, I think, pretty much. D is communication and interpersonal skills. Again, that's not something that I think we need tinker with, but certainly provide the information. We might provide information about, well, the relationships a tester has with other members of a project team. You might go into that level of detail, but it's all about communication and interpersonal skills, generic skills. Finally, the personal professional commitment to a code of ethics, continuous professional development, and so on and so forth. Again, pretty generic. However, the code of practice might have some refinements to cover what testers do. The code of ethics is very generic. I mean, it's very good, I have to say, because it's not very long. It's only a page, but it's very good. But it's very generic. I don't know whether we might refine that to cover what testers do to the same degree. So, okay, so how are we going to make this work? The first thing is if we establish an institution, we have to align it with the Institute of Engineering Technology, because what happens is we wouldn't get licensed straight away by the Engineering Council. We'd have to be a professional affiliate and take advantage of one of the other institutions who is licensed to do the accreditation for us, okay? Now, that would be an interim thing while the institution built its infrastructure and capability to do it for itself. And that might take months or maybe years. I mean, I don't know this yet. I've yet to have that conversation. In the meantime, we'd have to support testers to gain registration. So we would coach and advise testers to go through the Institute of Engineering and Technology kind of process, which wouldn't be a million miles away from what I've just described, okay? We need to build systems as a support network. We probably need volunteers and paid partners who would help us with mentoring and coaching. But to offer classes that align with the UK spec skills that have been identified, which is new in many respects for most testers. Most testers do not have or have not had lots of management training, leadership training, interpersonal skills training, etc., etc. So again, these things need to be identified. Like maybe we can use generic courses. It may be we have to build something specific or encourage the training vendors out there to build stuff that's specific for testers and just with scenarios that are relevant to testers, let's say, in the exercises they do. We also need to build a system to manage professional development. And now this is done by most of the institutions, but not done well, I think. Very few have a system that is trackable. They're more like simple diaries and calendars, I think, in most examples. So I think we've got an opportunity to do something better than most of the engineering institutions. Finally, now with all that done, we can apply for the TEI license, so we can accredit people ourselves. And all test engineers who had gone through the IET process, we would accept into the Test Engineering Institution without any cost at all, because they've gone through the process, they've paid their dues, they've qualified, if you like, so they can become test engineers, registered test engineers. I've got a kind of a roadmap, which I'm not going to dwell on, but what I'm trying to suggest is that it's a manageable process. It's not clear to me how long it might take, but it might be 2 years. It could take longer than that. But a lot depends on the relationship that we would have with the Engineering Council and how quickly we can get to the point where they believe we're competent to do what we want to do. Now, how do we market this? Well, I'm marketing it now, I suppose, but there's nothing to sell, if you know what I mean. Jonathan and I host the Vivit Worldwide database. That's got 38,000 accounts on it. Test Management Forum is the thing I've been running for 17 years. Technology Leadership Forum is kind of a migrated version of the Test Management Forum. And the Technology Knowledge Base, tkbase.com, that's been around for about 8-9 years. Again, the numbers, you can see the numbers of users. Now, when we bundle all those together and deduplicate and get rid of all the dead emails, I still think we're well between 30 and 40,000 people. So we have if you like, a market to push this towards. Now, the websites we have already, we would build Test Engineering Institute services based on the current platforms, but it would have its own website. Okay, needless to say. Now, progress. I've done some work on dictionaries and consolidating dictionaries of testing terminology, which I can demonstrate, but not today. I'm building a set of testing services to deliver prioritized test definitions from a range of sources. What does that mean? Suppose there are, let's say, 7 dictionaries of testing terminology. What we could do, from an individual's point of view, is prioritize some dictionaries above others. So let's say you were a standards person. You put the standards at the top and the less standardized versions, the non-standard versions at the bottom, and you would get the definitions from the high priority sources. If you hated standards and you preferred one of the other sources, it might be a company who has its own dictionary of terms, or IS2QB, or whatever source it is, it would prioritize those definitions. So when you called that service, you'd get a definition, and the first one on the list would be the one from your preferred dictionary, your preferred glossary. If the term is not defined in that glossary, it would find the term in the next prioritized dictionary for you. And I want to offer that as a service, and then we can start arguing about who's got the best definition. But at the moment, everybody's playing their own game. There's no kind of central kind of comparison facility that people can use. I've got a guy working in Sri Lanka looking to identify all the testing terms, but really testing concepts that are in 120,000 testing related blog posts. So in TK Base, we've been downloading and scraping blog posts for, I think, eight years now. And there's 120,000 of them. So if you like, I want to identify the terms that have no definition anywhere that are in usage within the testing community in blogs. I know blogs aren't the only source, but okay, it's a start. And I also want to build a graph database of the relationships between the entities in these various sources, because then again, that's something we do not have. And so I want to try and get into the data science side of things with all this, because I think that could help us to understand what stuff we need to know in our industry, what stuff we need a definition in the body of knowledge, what stuff we need a training module to support. There is a website already. It's skeletal, it's a menu, it's got a menu system and not much else. As you can see, there's a draft business plan, it's a draft. And I've started the conversation with the Engineering Council to see how they think we should proceed and make progress from where we are to where we want to be. Things to do. I think a sensible thing to do would be to take the UK spec criteria. I showed you the engineering technician material. There are 3 levels. It's the same content, but at a slightly more rigorous and more demanding criteria, if you like. So from that, I think we can identify the key skills that need to be in people's resume, if you like. And from that, you could then say, well, where the skills can be obtained. Now, it could be from existing training providers, it could be in the testing community, but it could be some of the generic classes from, professionals who work in interpersonal skills exclusively. But until we've got that list, we can't make much progress. But I think that's the way to go. we want to know whether you guys out there in the real world are interested in this or not. I would hope you would be, and I think some of the data that Isabel shared a few minutes ago in her talk, with the emotions coming out and the frustrations coming out, I think there's clearly a role for this kind of entity, this kind of institution, to support people who may be the only tester in the company, who feel a bit isolated. It could be something helpful to those guys, as well as people who want to plan their career 3, 5, 7 years ahead. Okay. Another next step is clearly we need an agreement with the Engineering Council to say, okay, we can get on the pathway towards licensing. If we're working through the Institute of Engineering and Technology, we need an agreement with those guys. I'm hopeful the Engineering Council would babysit that, make that happen. We need to establish a board of directors. We need to establish a governance scheme for this, because it would be a not-for-profit arrangement. Okay, it's going to collect money, but it's going to invest money, and it's not going to make a lot of money for anybody. So it would be likely to be a company limited by guarantee. So the directors would guarantee £1, if the thing went belly up and went insolvent. But there would be no shares, there would be no profits collected by shareholders. That's not the way it would work. So obviously we need to recruit some board members. So if you think you might be a candidate for being a board member, wherever you are in the world, get in touch. So we need feedback and some direction to know whether, is this the right thing to do? Does it meet some requirement that you've got? So is it a good idea? Is it the right thing to do? Do you want to be involved? Please get in touch. I haven't got a proper kind of contact management kind of facility up and running yet. Mail me at that address, or if you want to be kept informed, just register on Vivit, vivit-worldwide.org, or register at tkbase.com. They actually share the same registration database now. Okay. And if you do that, we'll keep you in touch, because you'll get occasional mail shots about what's happening at the moment. There's a Twitter account, but it's not been used, but that will be available before too long. Right now, that's all I have to say. A couple of references I'll leave on screen for a few seconds because the video will pick it up. But beyond that, I'm done. And thank you very much. And don't forget, it's a proposal. It's not a done deal. Everything is up for grabs. Thank you very much.